Chris Hayes did an update on the situation in Ferguson, Missouri, which is still very tense after the shooting of Michael Brown. And he had on an interesting character, to say the least, a KKK member.
The traditionalist American Knights of the Ku Klux Klan are sensing an opportunity, distributing flyers around the St. Louis area that read, quote, "Attention to the terrorists masquerading as peaceful protesters. You have awakened a sleeping giant. The good people of St. Louis County of all races, colors, and creeds will not tolerate your threats of violence against our police officers, their family, and our communities. We will use lethal force as provided under Missouri law to defend ourselves." Joining me now is Frank Ancona, Imperial Wizard and President of the Traditionalist American Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. Frank, where are you distributing these flyers? What are people's reception to them?
Well, these flyers are being distributed across St. Louis County and other areas in Missouri. And the reception, for the most part, has been very good to these flyers. And a lot of what I just heard right before you brought me on here was the police, saying basically the same thing. They're not going to tolerate any violence, and that's what this flyer is addressing. It kind of came about from the hundreds of calls we've been getting from residents of St. Louis County concerned with things that they're seeing on social media about random attacks on whites, DC sniper style type shootings. Police officers being threatened that their wives are going to be raped.
Have you been talking to law enforcement?
I have.
What are those conversations?
And, depending on who you talk to, and of course, all these things are off the record, but a lot of them are very frustrated with, how the governor has basically sided with the criminals in a lot of instances.
Wait a second, you have law
they
enforcement.
They have to stand there and
Frank,
get bottles of.
You have law enforcement talking to you off the record,
thrown at them.
confiding in you as a Grand Wizard of the KKK. You're telling me that you have local law enforcement talking to you personally off the record?
I'm telling you, I have friends who know people in law enforcement. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
He said he slipped up. He's like, yeah, I've been talking to law enforcement people. And then when Chris Hayes tries to get him to clarify, whoa, you're telling me that a Grand Wizard or Dragon or whatever the fuck of the KKK, you're talking right now to law enforcement officials? He's like, no, I have a friend of a friend who plays Parcheesi with them on Wednesday nights. Please, you already explained it. You already told us. He tried to save it once he realized he let the cat out of the bag. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. If there was any question remaining as to the integrity of the police department in Ferguson, Missouri, there you have it. And I love how at one point he says, well, the whole reason I'm concerned as a Grand Dragon of the KKK is that I don't want random attacks to happen on white people. Oh, that's what you're concerned about, random attacks on white people. But you're not concerned about random attacks on black people, as was happening a tremendous amount of the time beforehand. That you're not concerned about. In fact, we covered a story where the Ferguson Police Department pulled over a black man who was just driving to work. He had a name that was the same as somebody else who had a warrant. He didn't have a warrant. Somebody else had a warrant. The middle initials were different, and he kept saying, I'm not that guy, I'm not that guy. They said, yeah, okay, they brought him to jail. Threw him in a cell, and then they eventually opened up the cell, charged him, and beat the shit out of him. After they beat the shit out of him, they brought him to trial for bleeding on them. He bled on them because they beat the shit out of him, and they said, oh, you just assaulted an officer. We're going to bring you to court. It's like a scene out of a bad comedy movie, right? It's insanity, and this is what happened. There are reports, the Ferguson Police Department, they are notorious at this point for restricting civil rights and specifically targeting black people and going after them. And this guy's concern is the opposite. I'm so concerned about the poor, downtrodden, victimized white people. Please. And then, of course, my favorite part. The KKK is calling peaceful black protesters terrorists. Look out for these damn terrorists. These guys are so violent, and we should use lethal force against them. Yeah, they're the violent ones. You're the one that's saying use lethal force on them, and you're the one that's calling them terrorists. God, you know what this shows you? The KKK is the perfect example of tribalism at its worst, and also tribalism at its dumbest. Like there's not a. I was gonna say I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this, but this isn't even a limb. Anybody who's in the KKK, you're just not smart. Like you probably have a low IQ. You can't connect dots because all the time you guys have beliefs that are fundamentally ridiculous. The idea that you can do violence, you can be in favor of violence as you're advocating for right there, and then at the same time you call other people terrorists. Do you know the definition of terrorism? Terrorism is doing violence for a political reason. Okay? That's exactly what the KKK does. They do nothing but that. You are a terrorist organization. I can't stand how backwards these guys are. In the year 2014, they still exist. That guy is a real guy. He still exists. And he's talking to people in the police department. It's no surprise. We did the story the other day about how police officers were wearing I Am Darren Wilson bracelets. Just flat out supporting the guy who killed a black kid. Yeah, I'm on his side, as if they're sides. I'll take the side of the murderer, okay? That's the side I'm on. And then but of course, the blacks are so violent, which is why I just supported a murderer and said, let's use lethal force whenever we want. Yeah, they're violent. You nailed it.